Hi, everyone, and welcome to our part two of our webinar series when we've been deep diving into the findings of our 2025 buyer research report. Um, the report this year really focused on this trust gap that we're seeing between buyers and technology vendors, especially in the age of buying technology with AI. My name is Allison Hafner. I'm the CMO of Trust Radius, and I have two amazing guests that I'll introduce here in a second. But to talk a little bit and kind of set context for the topic that we'll be talking about, we've been doing buyer research for over a decade. And really, we want to keep a close eye if you think about Trust Radius and the millions of buyers that come to Trust Radius to ultimately do research and make a confident technology decision. We want to know what their buyer behavior is, their preferences, so we can help vendors essentially meet those expectations for their buyers and meet their target audience. And again, bridge that trust gap. And so for this topic, we really wanted to zero in on content. Um, we know that content is the lifeblood of marketing. There is no marketing without content. But as AI has been taking over the world, it seems like the commoditization of content is inevitable. But buyers are constantly being bombarded with messages, and this is only going to be more pervasive with AI. When we looked into the report, 72% of the buyers said that they were using the Google's AI overviews, and this continues to grow. But 90% of them said that they click through to at least one of the sources within that overview. So original content is still really valuable for many reasons. And they were also really looking at that content and trying to understand where it was coming from, who it was coming from. And 77% said that they were using, yeah, their peers to make a decision and reading reviews. So there's still this kind of word of mouth that's really important. Um, Also, when we're looking at, how are these models, these LLMs, what's the type of content that they're looking for? And there's been a lot of chatter on LinkedIn about the type of content, but really it boils down to what is this content that is original, hard to find, that can essentially answer the questions that people are putting into the prompts. And so people are looking for that authenticity, um, and I think that's really what we're going to be talking about today is how can content make a comeback and really build our brand in this age of AI. So with that, I'm going to introduce our lovely panel today. So we're really fortunate to have Kalina Bryant here. She was a Forbes 30 under 30 honoree and the founder of Unapologetic, her own media brand. She's really a pioneer of the intersection between technology and this authentic human connection through content. I have seen and experienced a lot of the programs that she's run and the amazing successes, whether she's been in-house at a technology company or as a consultant. So really excited to have Kalina here. We also have Nicole Lafer, sorry. And I meant to practice that. I knew I was going to mess that up. I'm sorry, Nicole. She is a leading expert in AI and works with CMOs to advise on their AI transformation. I actually saw one of Nicole's sessions during a CMO huddles, which is like a community of CMOs that gets together. And I was so impressed with so much of that, what she had to say and the advice that she was giving, that I wanted to bring her expertise to the Trust Radius stage. Um, she's really at the forefront of understanding how businesses can leverage AI, especially for marketing. And she emphasizes how AI can work with you and not replace you, which I think is really important, especially around this idea of content and the original content, um, and really helping brands retain that unique voice and value. So we have kind of two distinct perspectives on the panel today, and so let's jump in. So Nicole, really excited to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here. I always love talking to an amazing group of marketers that is interested in their own growth. So, this is a great experience.
Yeah, and I think that, marketers right now, we're all worried about, the amount of noise that's out there. And the with AI, it's only getting noisier and how we're going to be able to differentiate and be unique. So how have you kind of advised a lot of your clients and people that you've been talking to in the industry about like how do they not lose that unique voice and value when it comes to engaging with their target audience?
So the first thing is, I think it's never been more important that to understand your target audience. Like inside out, you need to understand who you're talking to, what they want to know, and then create content that is speaking to your deep understanding of who buys from you. Because I think one of the things that we kind of got complacent about before AI, and that AI is maybe amplifying significantly, is creating generic content. Like the internet just got filled with stuff talking to search algorithms rather than talking to the individuals that are buying from you. And so, one of the things that you really need to do if you do want to stand out now is be creating like hyper personal content that ties together your authentic brand story with the needs of your customer. Not just your story, not just the needs of your customer, but a proof point that you understand your customer and what they need, why they come to you, and why they choose you over your competitors. And when you start creating content like that, not only do you speak to your client and help close deals and bring people into your sphere that are the right target audience, but you're also teaching the AI who your customer is and who it should be that they is recommending when they put into a chat GPT or a Gemini or even Google, like regular Google search with AI overviews. As people learn to put more and more specifics in, you want it to know, this is this company's target client based off of all of the content you have published and recommend you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And something that from your CMO huddle session that stuck with me is like right for humans.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And it's such a like kind of like a dumb moment. And we've like lost that in marketing. But it's like right for your target audience, know who they are, what's going on in the industry, have a point of view, have a personality. Those are the things that AI won't be able to replace.
It won't. It can help you do that, right? Like it can help accelerate doing that, and it should. Like you should be leveraging it for sure to be able to compete, but it can never replace your personal experience and understanding of the humans you're talking to. And in all reality, when you write for humans, you're also writing for AI. Like that's what the AI is basically a human. And I think everybody's trying to crack this code. And at the end of the day, like we already all know the answer to this code. Like it is out there. It is talk to your audience and like
Mhm.
directly, specifically give them exactly what they need. And that's going to help you across the board.
And so when you think about that strategy and, when you're talking to CMOs, how are you thinking about like the org structure of like content marketing, right? Like I think that, my first hire at when I moved over to Trust Radius was content marketer. And I was like again, going back to marketing or content being the lifeblood, how is that org chart going to change?
I don't think our marketing orgs are going to look anything like what we think of them as right now, because I think what everybody does is going to dramatically change. So you're not going to have people whose entire job is just writing content. Even if you are creating authentic, like really personal, highly targeted content, that's just not going to be a role in the marketing org of the future. No, I say of the future because, like, let's just be really, really, really real right now. Very few people actually understand how to use this technology. And until enough people have upskilled to the point of actually being able to capitalize on it to do marketing well, which is absolutely possible to use it as a tool. That's what I go in and help teams do is learn the skills to do it. But even people who think they're using it don't understand how to actually use it to do a good job. And we're not going to be changing our org charts in any significant way until people actually have the skills to take advantage of the technology. So right now, I think CMOs are far, far more focused on getting their teams the skills that they need, more than thinking about like long-term org charts. There are some that are, but it's not this week, it's not next week. They're looking a little bit further out. Now, when they start changing the org chart, they're thinking in terms of like what kind of roles are going to be needed to control the AI and what are the checkpoints that are going to be needed, because nobody can responsibly use AI. No companies can responsibly implement AI and effectively use AI without human checkpoints and human involvement in this process. So the really forward thinking CMOs are going, okay, how do I structure this in a way that we have the humans managing and controlling the AI? You take the ones who know their subject matter expertise, like of the type of marketing that they do. They know it inside out and they know how to use the AI to help them do their job better than any human could do alone, than any AI could do alone. And that's how they're really starting to look at this for the long term. And they're also starting to look at it of they're going to want people who have diverse marketing skill sets, like full stack marketers who can understand wider array of what they're doing. So maybe you would have like a product content marketer, right? That they understand how to do the persona research, the framing, the messaging, and pull that into content in collaboration with the AI. So they're just kind of starting to go, which kind of skills and attributes go together? How do people expand their skill sets, both in AI and in marketing in general? And how do we start structuring it that you have humans managing the AI with human checkpoints as well?
Yeah. And so within your advisory and you're talking to these CMOs, what are like two things? Like one is how do you help them get started? Because I
Mhm.
feel like again, like I was in this CMO group and I decided to like every time there was like a different technology, like AI technology that they were using in some kind of random pop-up like point solution, I did like a tally mark. And by
Mhm.
the end of the hour, there were like 15 different tools that were talked about. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming for a CMO, for a team. So, how do you like help CMOs or just marketing teams in general wrap their head around it? Start from like here's phase one, phase two, and then within that journey, what are like some of the misconceptions that people have around AI and especially around content creation?
So the first thing I usually do is rein in the idea that you need 15 or 20 tools, right? Like, because it's impossible, right? Like, no single person is going to learn 15 different tools, how to effectively use them, know which, when you use which, and then they use none of them, right? You could buy 15 tools and you're not going to ever touch any of them if you do that. You could buy 5 tools and you're not going to ever really touch any of them because it's too overwhelming. It's too many things to keep track of. So usually the first thing I do is help them figure out, like, if they don't already know, some already know, like, let's find you a foundational core AI tool that can be kind of the centerpiece of your AI strategy. And this should be a tool that can do most things that you would want to do with AI. So in my book, that includes ChatGPT, paid versions like the business versions, not like free ChatGPT, but like a paid ChatGPT account, or a Google Gemini for Workspace account, or a Claude account, or in some cases, a Microsoft Copilot account. Those are really what I would consider core foundational AI tools. And it's like, okay, let's pick one and let's stick with that. And now let's build you the skills using that tool as your learning basis to understand, how do you communicate with AI? What is this tool capable of? How do you use the different features and functionality? And for most things that the vast majority of marketers do, they're never going to need a tool beyond that if they actually know how to use it. It's just that nobody realizes that ChatGPT could write code and create the things that they're going to another tool for, that ChatGPT can make images, that it can do strategic thinking, that it can do analysis, like it can do all of these things that they're looking to 87 other tools for. So it's, let's build your team's understanding, skills, strategy, and workflows using these tools as the base. And only once your team really understands how to use it and has adopted that one tool do you start even considering any additional tools. And that would be very specific role based, very specific to an individual. Like maybe one person does need another tool, not 78 other tools, another tool. And you start doing it in that way, and people adopt at a much higher level and actually are able to bring a lot more value to their work. But you also can't just throw them a chat GPT account and go, now figure it out. Because like chat GPT is not simple, right? Gemini is not simple. You can use them. You could just put in a couple of words and get something. But in all reality, there's lots of buttons, features, settings, things you need to choose from, and even just what you communicate and how you communicate it has gotten very complex. So you've got to help people build the skills and understanding. You can't just expect them to figure it out themselves. And then I don't even remember the second part of that question. I am so sorry because I went
So
down
you
the.
no no no, I mean that you kind of started leading into it about like the misconceptions of it,
Yeah,
right? Well, one is like, oh my gosh, I need 15 tools, and it sounds
yeah,
like it's just one. Start thinking about the use cases, start building out the skill set. Um, and then around content, what do you think is that misconception? Like again, kind of going back to what we are at the beginning, was just like this commoditization of content and the generic content.
gotcha. Yeah.
What are you seeing?
So I think there's a few misconceptions and they kind of go in different ways, right? So, like,
Mhm.
on the one hand, you have this misconception that some people have that AI can just do all of your content for you and it could be like a set it and forget it and almost like completely automated from the point of like the AI comes up with the idea, like it surfs the internet, it comes up with the idea, it writes the copy, it posts the copy, and you don't need a human involved at all. One hand, you have people that think that, which like could not be farther from the truth. If you don't want to be risking like major potential false advertising, potential like really awful content, brand representation, posting out things that say things like, as a OpenAI large language model, like things happen when you start automating to an extreme that you can't expect. So those that think it's like completely automatable, that's one side of misconception. The other side of misconception is that all AI writing is bad. There is no good AI writing. A human is always better. I call it a human superiority complex, kind of a misconception that like you're always sacrificing quality for an AI to be involved, or the AI can have no original thoughts whatsoever in your
Mm.
content. So like if an AI is involved, it's complete garbage that has been regurgitated. And that couldn't be further from the truth either, because while you absolutely need a human involved in that process, but if a human knows what they're doing, they can take all their original ideas and turn it into very, very well written, high quality content that takes 20% of the time to create from start to finish, as it would for a human to actually like do that entire process themselves. And then the last misconception I have is that AI can like that I've seen a lot of is that AI content is sacrificing performance if the AI is
Mhm.
involved in it. And so it's a matter of like you're choosing efficiency over performance. And like the really hard and unfortunate truth that I have seen in my own, and like as an aside, I started early in my life. I was a writer. I mean, I was high school newspaper, college newspaper. Like I have done it all as a writer. I worked for a national business magazine as a senior editorial assistant while I was in college. I interned at a national magazine. Like I'm a very, very, very good writer. I've been a marketing copywriter. I've been the one that wrote the copy my whole career. And like, to be totally honest, AI written content, like when I use AI to assist me in writing my content, it blows every fully human created thing I can do out of the water. Now, if I just had AI do it and I didn't touch it, that would not be the case. But that collaborative, like performance wise, if it's me and AI done well, that performance is through the roof. And so, this idea that when you bring AI in, you're sacrificing performance, you're sacrificing quality is another huge misconception because when you actually measure it, that's just not true. Now, poorly done AI content will never touch in performance. But again, if you have this skill set, it's just a very false idea that it won't perform nearly as well.
Yeah, I feel like some marketers would almost have like this sense of guilt. You're like, it's kind
The
of to your point.
cheating.
It's like I'm a writer, like I love like hands-on keyboard, and now you have AI that's like writing all this. You're like, is this? I don't know, I feel like almost like guilty that I didn't like that I didn't write this myself. But I think to your point, and that is a misconception where it's like it's this partnership to essentially accelerate a lot of the original ideas that you've had. Um, and it kind of goes back to, it's this better together kind of story. And people, I think also like, yes, to your point where like everything can be automatically created and distributed, et cetera. That can lead to a lot of pitfalls. Yeah. And so when you are also kind of like working with these teams, I always think about like product marketing, the positioning, the messaging, et cetera. Then that goes to like content marketing. There, everything kind of builds from that, and then it goes to like an integrated marketing to like build out the campaign. So there's like so many different parts of this. But how do you think of those layers and how AI is going to like accelerate that? Because I just feel like this kind of like linear uh of content is really going to change, given how AI can accelerate that.
I think in that way, our org structures are going to change a lot because the
Mhm.
biggest obstacle that I see so many organizations, especially larger organizations with bigger teams that have lots of people who get involved in each thing, one of the biggest obstacles they are having when they want to adopt is that like bureaucratic process and too many
Mhm.
hands on the same thing. So I think that we're definitely going to see a lot of changing in how stuff flows through organizations, how people work together. In some of these bigger marketing orgs I work with on like a consulting basis, we do a lot of cross team work and building the workflows that do work together because you can't build in a silo. Like if you have 7 different teams involved in getting a piece of content out, you cannot just have the content team build your AI workflows and like what that AI strategy is going to be. You have to get every one of those teams collaborating together and figuring out how can we build this out that it works for everyone and it doesn't create the bottlenecks. And like to be totally honest, I have a lot of companies and they're like, we want to use AI to get things faster and better. And it's like, yeah, like this isn't an AI issue. This is a bureaucratic, too many hands in this one thing to bring it to market issue. And so companies are going to be like, suddenly, I think AI is bringing that to their awareness. They thought it was a human, like, this is just a structure of the org and how it has to go. And you have to have all of these people involved. And AI is just making them hyper aware that, like, maybe we don't need so many people in the process for any individual thing. And we maybe should be breaking it up. And that's kind of where I'm saying, like, when I see org structures changing in the long term, it's going to be like, what people in that process could one person handle with AI, and then maybe you have, instead of it being like 6 different people do it, each of these 6 people are handling their own content instead of 6 people handle one piece. So it's not necessarily like some immediate like jobs get eliminated thing as much as how you do that to eliminate the bottlenecks so that AI can be leveraged in the process.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of goes to your point around this idea of this kind of like full stack marketer that really understands like each of the different components of the way marketing campaigns are built, how brand strategy is built, how digital marketing works, and they kind of understand all of it.
Mhm.
Um, but they're not maybe like the deep expert, but they can manage that kind of cross functionally, and AI can help accelerate it. And then I do think there's still, this like the space for like, someone that is a deep expert, maybe like in a particular industry, or, and that can help with your positioning and messaging, that's like really thinking about kind of again going back to that human piece. So it's going to differentiate you in establishing that, and then giving that to the AI to then, okay, great, build all of this content for us. We have the humans and kind of those checkpoints like you mentioned before. So I think there's going to be like this combination of like this full stack marketer that really understands all the different components of marketing, that can run with campaigns really quickly. And then there's also going to be like this deep expertise that's needed,
Mhm.
to establish the foundation that AI can kind of run with.
Exactly. And I think a lot of like the roles of content marketers are going to be largely around like being the humanizer. right? Like your role is
Mm-hmm.
going to be largely about you need to be going and talking to the customers and doing the interviews and getting the quotes and the stuff that makes this it like really cannot be replaced by an AI, right? Like an AI can't go out and have a in-depth conversation. I mean, I guess it could, but it's not going to be good to have an in-depth conversation with your client. Your client probably is not going to want to. They're not going to like be doing that. So like you going out and having that conversation, drawing those insights, the storytelling, the understanding of the impact in the real world and like lived experience being brought into your content, like that's going to be the like future role of a content marketer. And yes, there's going to be writing, but that writing is probably going to be more in the form of like getting it into the form that like you're writing it into a prompt to give to the AI to spin out. But really understanding how your product's being used effectively, who it is, the stories behind your product, like that's where you're going to shine. You're almost becoming like an investigative journalist for your company, for your own product. So,
Oh, I love that. That's a really great analogy. Perfect. Well, Nicole, thank you so much. We're going to
yeah.
bring up Kalina now, a content marketer extraordinaire, building her own media brand. And I really think, as Nicole kind of has like that expertise in the AI, but I think your experience in terms of the authenticity for this group um, is really important. So, Kalina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to see what you're doing.
So, when you thought about starting like unapologetic and, all the different programs that you build out, where do you start? Because I think that's the other piece of this again, like going back to, okay, we kind of understand this like AI strategy and where you start, but like you also have to have a content strategy.
hmm That's a good question. So it always starts off with, who are you speaking to? So I always ask myself, whatever I produce, whether that's a podcast or an event for a company, a webinar series, I want to understand, who will this touch? If you have spare time, and let's say, what are you going to do with your spare 30 minutes? I want you to read my content. I want you to listen to my content. If on a Thursday night you have availability from 6 to 8 p.m., why would you attend my event? And I start from there because we want to make sure that we're creating community. So everything that I do in terms of content, I always ask myself, who is my community, which therefore is, who is my persona. And this goes for if you're working for an actual company, 9 to 5, versus if you're doing your own content. You always have to understand, what's that persona, who's your target audience. If you're in the customer marketing world, right, it's like, who's your ICP? If you're a salesperson, right, who's the person that you want to sell to? I look at it as, you have your executive sponsor, you have your actual like end user, and then you have the person that's going to truly advocate for your product. And if you understand that, then you understand, well, here's the target words that this person uses, or what draws their eye. This is the type of audience that they like. If you're going after executives, I always say, okay, you want to write content, or you want to have a happy hour at a rooftop for that type of executive. But overall, it always goes back to, who am I speaking to, and what's going to get them to click on this? What's going to get them to register for this?
Yeah. I think that's such a good point, and Nicole mentioned that too, of like really understanding who your target audience is, the language that they use, the um, what's actually going to build that community. And I think with and again kind of going back to AI kind of is going to be everywhere, the sense of community and this kind of peer to peer exchange is going to be even more important. So you've worked a lot with customer marketing teams and led customer marketing teams. So when you think about kind of like this customer led strategy and thinking about brand, what are the types of things that like AI won't be able to replicate, and how do you use kind of those customer-led strategies, those brand-led strategies to do that?
I think that AI can't take away that human connection, right?
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, last month I was invited to attend a Microsoft private creator event. And it was a small, intimate event that had no more than 45 creators in the room. And they were trying to outline their new products and they wanted us to test it. But the whole moral of that is your invitation was crafted by actual human being. 2 days before the invitation or the actual event, there was a human being that asked, like, hey, are you coming? Any restrictions? And FYI, we'll be giving out X, Y, and Z if you do show up. And then when you actually got there, the human that was inviting you to that event was actually there to greet you. They knew everything about you, your background, your profile. Now, of course, they probably use AI to generate all of those bios and then information in the LinkedIn, but nothing touches understanding someone that's been scouting you to attend event. And then when they actually go to the event, they want to have a drink with you and learn more about what you're doing, not just in the past, but what's next. And I think that in the land of AI, that's the one thing that we as human beings have going for ourselves. When you're going out into the world and you want to connect and create with individuals, you want to create with real individuals, not a bot. And I think that it's all about experience. I think that in the customer marketing world and just the business world in general, when you're thinking about long-term interactions and real relationships, people are so hungry for someone that has the same perspective as them or someone that can challenge them to think outside of the box. And right now, when you work with AI, of course AI can adjust. You can tell it, like, I don't like what you said, change it. And AI will totally say in 2 seconds, okay, how about this approach? It never goes against what you're saying, right? It's a computer. It's learning whatever you feed it. But when you're in a space with a community and an experience, you get to be challenged by other like-minded individuals, and you get to learn and expand your horizon. And I think that's one thing that AI can't take away.
That's so important, and I think if you even think about like the sales use case, right? It's like kind of the tip of the spear right now, and like of accelerating the sales cycle. And it's like my husband's a CRO, and he was like trying to figure out his AI strategy, and he's like, "What are salespeople going to do? If 85% of my job is like finding the right accounts, finding the right people, doing all the research, knowing like the right time to reach out to them, etc." I'm like, that means that you can focus on building the relationships, having that human connection, being super consultative. Like it just changes the role in terms of, you don't have to spend 85% of your time doing all this kind of like almost like grunt work, right? But you can actually connect with the person you're trying to sell to, or your customer that you're trying to retain, or whatever it is. And so I think that's such a good point.
Mhm.
It just reframes kind of like our role, where we're like, okay, great, we can automate all this stuff that takes us forever to do, and we can really focus on the
Mhm.
human connection piece.
I like what you said by the automate part. And I would say, I work with a lot of salespeople, and starting off in the corporate world, I was an SDR. And now you see there's platforms that are taking the place of SDRs, but they can't fully take the
Mhm.
place of SDR. So I think, to your
Right.
point, doing the grunt work, right? And that goes to if you're a creator, if you're a writer, if you're a sales executive, if you're a marketing executive, AI is a phenomenal assistant. I love it, right? Like, I talk to it as if I'm saying, hey, I need this done, this done. I need to pull research. Even if you're an event strategist, right? If you're going to Los Angeles and you want to have the hottest rooftop experience, you can tell AI, like, give me the top five. But you still have to call the top five. You have to look and see if that company or that restaurant still exists. And that's the same thing from a sales perspective, right? You can get the hottest lead list, but if you need to sell to the CEO of the top, let's say 50 accounts, right? You as an individual still have to go on the phone with them. You have to be able to pitch them and build that strategy. And I think that AI is a great balance of, it's almost like a twisted friendship, right? Or a assistant that never sleeps, right? If you're up, it can be up with you. But you need to know how to work it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's such a good point of like, it kind of gets us, and Nicole was kind of talking about this as well. It's like it gets us like 80-90% of the way there. And then the 10% is really around the human piece. But think about how much time you have now to, again, like if you talk to a salesperson, or hey, like I've just spent all this time, I have to do all this research, and the SDRs roll into me now. So it's like, I've just spent all this time doing the X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, great. Now what can you do? And it just can accelerate your career because you can focus on all this stuff that's like actually going to like help you in the long run. And it's not necessarily this kind of, the mundane kind of research, all this like stuff that should be automated, right? Like humans don't like doing that type of stuff.
Exactly, exactly. And I think it always goes back to the human connection. I think that we live in a world right now where people are afraid of AI until you understand how to work it, right? I think
Yeah.
that we always fear what we don't know, the unknown. But I think from a human connection, you should be welcoming AI. And I think that as a creator, every day you have 50 million ideas, but you can't do 50 million ideas in one day. But you can box that in, you can build strategy, you can leverage AI to help you pinpoint what does a 6 month strategy look like with this new idea. What does 1 year look like? If you're a CRO and you have a certain quota, maybe you can use AI to help you build out that strategy and understand your milestones. And if you're a creator, right, sometimes I always ask myself, well, what am I going to write today with my newsletter? How am I going to help this business succeed? If I'm working with a product individual, how do I talk to them? I'm not a product expert, but I can figure out how to be a product expert or understand the content that's going to feed to them. Therefore, I can help a business succeed even further. But we always have to start with that question of, well, what do you want to accomplish in this state that you're in right now? And how do you, work backwards and build those, I would say, blocks, right? Those blocks to fulfill those milestones.
And that's a good segue. So let's talk about unapologetic and like where you started, because you started this years ago and now, AI kind of came into the mix and how has your strategy changed? So like phase one when you launched it and now, as you continue to grow, what's the future strategy?
Yeah, so originally, to be fair, Unapologetic started out, just honestly a little frustration. I said, I just want to be able to voice my opinion. And, I thought I was going to create a blog, it turned into a podcast, and the podcast blew up. And all of a sudden, every single thing that I was doing in the customer marketing world, I had, made it to the highest level from a customer marketing perspective, leading an entire strategy of how do we talk to our customers, but how do we brand our customers or organizations. So I took that exact methodology of what I would do with a customer and I built that into Unapologetic. And I started figuring out who to interview and how to monetize the content. I would say the thing that has changed is now everyone has a podcast, right? So when I was starting the podcast, it was almost like, how do you create this content? But in reality, that was the easiest point. It was just more so of believing in yourself and actually executing something. And then Unapologetic turned into consulting and community, and really advocating for individuals and teaching them how to advocate for themselves. And so what has migrated from content being constantly produced on a podcast on a weekly basis, it's very strategic now. So the podcast is still there. Nevertheless, the podcast comes out with very strategic individuals on a monthly basis now. And we're now trying to target individuals that can help you build equity, specifically for women and women of color. Now, what has changed is the things that AI can't really help you navigate. So we do a lot of confidence building training. We consult with different organizations that want to have better events. We work with individuals that want to have a better brand. So working with CEOs that want to cultivate who they really are authentically, not just as a CEO, but are you a family person, right? Do you travel? What's something that you love to do that the rest of the world doesn't know? And how can we humanize you, right? I think that the higher you go as an executive, you unfortunately are not humanized. People see you as this so far to reach individual, but when you work with Unapologetic, we make you more real. We make you more connected. We make people want to follow you, connect with you, follow your events, follow your content. And then I think with individuals right now that are graduating from universities are 1 to 3 years within their or within their jobs, they have a hard time trying to figure out who they identify as in their job. And they're really worried right now in the land of AI of like, will AI take my job? And I think that you can't think that way, right? You have to understand what you bring to the table. And when you're working with me, whether it's a workshop or whether that's coaching or whether that's one-on-one community development or webinars, you are understanding here is who I am as an individual, here's my expertise, and here's why I am valuable, and here's why AI cannot take my role, right? But you have to be able to pitch that. You have to, number one, believe it in yourself. And then you have to be able to talk to the CMO, the CEO, and whoever else it is that says, hey, we need Allison in this job. She told me this, this, and this. That's what Unapologetic helps you do. We help you cultivate, I would say, a pitch and actually understand who you are in the new world of AI, and understanding how your your expertise cannot be taken by AI. So there's so many different things. Obviously, it started off as a podcast, something fun, content that I didn't know people would love, but it migrated into now help me more. As I heard your podcast, I
Mhm.
listened to it on on my way to work, but now I'm still struggling to this. So it's more hands-on is what Unapologetic has evolved into. I would say content is still generated. We leverage AI now to make sure that we share best practices from all of our key findings. But when you think about unapologetic, when we think about it from an executive level, a corporation level, an individual level, we are trying to figure out how to help you navigate the new digital world that isn't slowing down.
Yeah. And then again, I think that just goes back to kind of that concept where, hey, you can create all this content now, like what probably took you, weeks to get a podcast together. You can get this out. So you can get this really rich content out that's original, it's coming from these people. And then now you're really focusing on the human aspect. Like, who are you? What are you bringing to the table? I think with my team, anytime I have a new manager or you're building up the leaders within your organization, I always ask them, I'm like, what defines you as a leader? What define like, and how do you want to come across, and how do you want the team to like perceive you? And I think it's a really good, especially in the age of AI, and is understanding, okay, hey, what type of what do I want people to know about me? And the same thing for your brand, right? Like, so if you're thinking yourself as an individual in my role, it's like, what am I going to bring to the table now that I can accelerate a lot of these things that might have been holding me back with AI? But then also think about your brand. Like, what does your brand stand for? What is your, again, going back to with Nicole, we were talking about what's your personality, what's your brand voice, etc. So I think those are all just like super important things to keep in mind, is like that's what's going to differentiate you, and that's what's going to keep everything cohesive. Because I think the other thing too, I always worry about, I'm like, if we all start kind of going in different directions with AI, like the cohesive brand message is like a little
And
scary.
I would say, just adding on to that, consistency. And so if
Yes.
we think about creating unapologetic versus now, the one thing that is always working for me as a creator is I am consistent on helping people navigate their version of success, whether that's a business, an individual, or a CEO. My goal is to make sure that you are better than what you are today. And I think that in the land of AI, you can have a template created today, and then tomorrow have a new template, and then on Wednesday have a new template, and then next Wednesday have another new template. And when you do that, you cannot scale, because you're not getting into a rhythm or a system. You're basically just trying to consistently take templates that you think works for someone else but may not work for you. And I think that if we could leverage, I guess if I take a step back, the way I leverage AI right now is I look at what are my strengths? How do I operate as an individual? How do I build a business? And how do I continue to help people around me? Once I create that and get those checkpoints, I create my own version of that template. And, there's so many tools out there, right? You got Notion, you got Google Docs, and you name it. I'm an old school person. I like my Google Docs so I can edit real live where I'm at. Notion templates, no shade to Notion. I think it's great, but it's just too busy for me. But just being able to, grow with your template, grow with your content. I think that we all need to get into a rhythm in order to look back at what's working. If I look at some of my content I produced in 2021, it's amazing to see that the narrative hasn't changed, but some things have shifted. And also sometimes I can look back and see that one view or one piece of collateral got way more better views or way more engagement than today. And I
Yeah.
think that we all need to understand the value of being consistent so we can always measure and alternate when needed.
Yeah. I mean, consistency is half the battle when it comes to marketing. And I think that's somewhere where AI can really step in and help us. Okay, so we're coming up on time, so I want to bring up Nicole and have some final thoughts with both of you. Um, we had one question, there's one tactical question in the chat. Nicole, maybe you could kick us off on some content planning tools. I think you kind of went into like pick one tool, but a lot of the kind of tech stack that we already have, they're implementing AI into it. And so that's kind of an interesting piece too. But what do you recommend from like a content planning perspective when it comes to an AI tool?
I would honestly just use whatever that core tool you're using is. So either ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or Claude. Like if you're using one of those as your main AI tool, you do not need to add something else. Now, I'm seeing like in the question, they're asking about Notion. If you use Notion and that's your workflow, then like it's available right there, then sure, go ahead and use Notion. But like don't go add Notion for that purpose, right? Like use something. So either be using, like, if you're doing it through a chat kind of an interface, doing it with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whichever your core tool is, that you're not having to adopt something extra in that. Or if you use like Google Docs and you have Gemini, then just do it in the side panel or in chat, and then you could just send it straight into a doc. But also understand these core tools are adding connection abilities so fast. So even if your tool doesn't currently connect to your main tool, it probably will very quickly. So you're going to be able to like pull it into templates wherever you want, wherever you work from, if it's not there this week. It may already be there this week, depending on exactly what you use at the pace of it. And I'm always even hesitant, like we're at a live event. I haven't read AI news updates in like the last hour. So I'm like, I can't even tell you whether or not it can or cannot do something, because I have had more times that I could count that I'm like, that's probably coming soon. And then like literally I get off the call and it was like rolled out while we were on the call. And it's not because I know something that like, I'm just like secretly know it. It's just because it happens that quickly. So, but I would not
Yes.
reinvent any kind of wheels on that. Just use what you've got on content planning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so last question here, and maybe Kalina, we'll start with you. So, what do you think is like some practical advice for marketers who are thinking about their content strategy, but are maybe either hesitant or unsure about how to integrate AI? What's kind of like that practical advice for them?
So I'm going to take a step back. I think that the word that's coming out to me is credibility. And so I've always, so in my day life, I run customer advisory boards, right? And the reason why you have customer advisory boards is because you want customers, your most strategic customers, to validate your product. You want them to give you feedback on what needs to be changed. And you also want them to be a trusted partner where they can, give quotes and share content, et cetera. Now, if you take that same customer advisory board and create your own board of directors when it comes to your content or your organization, your media, I think start there, right? Because you could be using AI and just not even understanding the mission of what you're trying to do, or not understanding who you're targeting. That goes back to the ICP. So I think that it's nice. You don't need 7 people, 8 people. Really, you just need 2 or 3 trusted individuals. And I would say people that you admire and respect, that have ideally gone a little bit further than you, so they can help you navigate some of their pitfalls, right? So if someone that I know is creating a podcast, right, or they want to create a webinar for the first time, I would be more than happy to not just show them what helped me win, but more so what helped me fail, right? Like learn from what I did wrong, so then you can go a lot faster than I did in the beginning. And I would say before you start trying to leverage AI, if you do those those 3 board of directors, right? Before you leave here with someone that's, great with how to monetize your money, right? With someone that's great to help you monetize your content, who's someone that's great that knows how to leverage the 3 templates or the tools, right? If you can outline those individuals and ask them, can you guide me, whether that's a call once a month or once a quarter before I launch something. That will set you up for success for two reasons. One, because if they approve and they say, yes, I like this, you already have this confidence to know that, hey, I'm going to roll this out tomorrow and it's going to be great. Even if I get some feedback, I know that 2 or 3 individuals that are in the industry respect this. Or the opposite, someone can say, I totally don't understand what you're trying to produce. And even if you put this in AI, I really don't get it. Then it's like, if that person doesn't get it and you publish it, no one might understand it. So I think go back to the basics and understand who your community could be, who your executive could be, who your board of directors can be, to really help you be successful, but also hold you accountable. Because again, if you start something and you don't continue it or finish it, eh, you know, I think that being a creator, you have to continue to persevere regardless of if something is getting good views or not. And when you have that board of directors, you are held accountable.
Yeah. And Nicole, there was a question that popped up in the chat that I think that, when we're moving away from, I think, like this SEO strategy.
Yeah.
And how do you like, and so, because you're thinking about like your brand, right? And like the whole SEO strategy was to make sure that your brand's getting out there. Kalina, you talked a lot about this too, but and brand is going to become so important. But how is that shifting from like this SEO strategy to like this AI showing up in LLM?
Yeah. So one thing I would caution, I wouldn't be worrying about SEO anymore. Like totally. And I know that is not a popular take and people don't want to hear it, but I'm just like, don't super stress about it because it is going away so quickly. And it's kind of like planning for this week when like by the time you get it done, it's going to be next month. So, and the speed at which things are changing is just so fast. Even just like how much more Google is doing AI overviews and that kind of thing. Like traditional SEO isn't what it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. That said, I also would be weary and cautious of listening to anybody who claims they actually fully understand how to get the LLMs to talk about you, because even the people who create them don't even fully understand what's going on there, right? Like, so take any specific strategy with a grain of salt as far as like a must do strategy. Now, that's not saying don't try, but I would personally be looking at with understanding how these LLMs work, meaning, so, and for anybody who doesn't know, I'm not big on the jargon, the large language models that are the ones talking to you inside ChatGPT or inside Gemini. The way that they work is they've consumed massive amounts of information, learned basically the entire internet. Maybe they're going out and doing internet searches just like you would and consuming the information and using that and doing like based off of what you've put in, they are going to give you a response. I want you to start looking at where are people in using this right now and where are they going to be in the near future. And also understanding that anything you're creating, if it's with the idea of these tools talking about you, it may be a little bit more future looking, because there's a lag time between when these models learn and when you're using them. And they're evolving really quickly on how they search the internet, how many pages they go to, how much they consume. So it's changing very quickly. So I want you to look a little in the future, which is really scary when you don't understand the technology right now. But what you've got is two kinds of different, very distinct groups of people searching in these tools. So in one hand, you got the people that are the vast majority of people using ChatGPT. They type in basically a Google search in ChatGPT and they get, or into Google, and they get an AI response. That is still almost everybody in the scheme of the world who is using this. That's how they're using it. That is today. You got to look at people who are a couple of years ahead of that, the early adopters, and how they're using it, because that's indicative of where it's going. When I search for something on ChatGPT, I do not say, tell me a good hotel in Sweden to stay in, right? Like I was just in Europe and I was using AI to help me find hotels. I said, here's who I'm traveling with. This is the purpose of the trip. This is what I like about hotels. This is what I don't like about hotels. This is what I need. This is what I want. Find me the perfect hotel. Go read all of the reviews and give me a list of potential options that would be good for me for this trip, specifically at this time of year with the kinds of things I want to do. I laid out, that was my search. right? That is how people are going to eventually understand that they can search in ChatGPT, in Gemini, in all of these tools. And that is what you should be preparing for. So when you want to optimize for that, that means you need to understand what the person who wants you to wants you, again, it's going back to what does the person want, understanding your persona, understanding that. And you need to be creating as much internet content as you possibly can that shows that you solve those needs. What are they looking for? What would they thought dump into an AI of all the things that they would want? And you need to make sure that that is all out there in every way you possibly can. Because the AI is going to go consume all that. It's going to get smarter and smarter and smarter at understanding all of that. It's going to try to meet the needs of that individual person, not the general everything. So there's no keyword anymore. There's concepts. You got to create the concepts that show that you are what you are. Well, that means in the software world, you got to not only tell them in like bulleted, hypey lists of what your product does or what it is, but you need to explain why it matters, who's using it, how they're using it, what pain points it solves, what problems it solves, how it changed their lives, what problems brought it to you. Like that list is really long, and you need to be creating your content around that for two reasons. One, it's going to teach the AI when it does its training, but also as these AIs go and read more and more and more pages and they're trying to find the most specific result, you want them responding and recommending you. And the bonus is when the people go to your website, you're going to show you understand them. When they click through on that, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, they know me. I'm the right person. The amazing thing I'm hearing from so many people that have like really good content like this is, you would not believe how specific the like leads I'm getting from ChatGPT are. They're already qualified. They're the best leads you're going to get, right? So like create your content future looking with that in mind, and sort of forget the SEO specifically in the long term. And it's probably going to help you with your SEO as well when you start doing that.
That's a great point to like end on and kind of feel like full circle. It's like, what do buyers care about? And what are the questions that they're going to be asking? And at the end of the day, they want to find information, a product, whatever, that's right for them, their role, the stage company that they're at. So the more context that you can put into your content, the better. And so you want to like anticipate what your customers or buyers or your that whole audience, that target audience is going to be asking, and provide that information and be really specific to add that context. So I think that's a great spot to end on. And if you're interested, we have our 2025 buyer research report that kind of goes into that. We surveyed a lot of buyers on like, what is the information that they want? What's the product information? How do they want to hear from their peers? So you can start to think about that and dive into that even deeper. So thank you so much, Kalina and Nicole, for being here today. It was so fun to talk to you both and really enlightening. I felt like I even walked away with a ton of ideas for my own marketing strategy. So thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Thank you.